Hi, Low No Nation, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Low No Drinker podcast with a fantastic episode from a wonderful, wonderful woman called Zoey Henderson. Now, before we get into it, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this recording. So this episode was recorded in November 2023, and in it, Zoey Henderson, who is the founder of the Fungtn Mushroom Brewing Company, talks so passionately about her beers, about the inspiration that led her to create them, about the wonderful medicinal properties that are found to be found in mushrooms like reishi and lion's mane, which go into her beers, how they taste, what they can do for people. She does it in such a down to earth and really open and honest way. What I loved about talking to Zoey is that she felt like a bit of a kindred spirit in that she's not trying to tell people that they shouldn't drink. She's not trying to demonize alcohol. She's not trying to say that all boozing and boozers are bad. She's simply trying to produce a product that is exceptional quality that can help you live a life less intoxicated on your own terms. And that is 100% what I am about and what Low No Drinker is about. Since recording this episode back in November, Zoey has been working really, really hard to keep the business going, to raise some funding for the business, because as with most small independent low-no producers, there comes a point where scaling becomes an essential part of your business plan to move things forward. And if you're not able to scale, you won't be able to reach the demands of your public, to be able to produce enough good quality product to serve the people that want it in a way that is financially viable. One of the biggest challenges that our small independent producers have is the sheer cost of producing their beverages when you compare it to big alcohol, who are able to roll out zero or low no beers and other products at a rate of knots, because they already have the factories behind them, they already have the processes behind them, they already have the marketing budgets behind them, they already have the name of the brand behind them. So when a new and independent brand is coming up to do the same thing, the scales of economy are not in their favor. As such, Zoey is now finding herself in a position where if she's not able to raise the right investment within a short period of time, I don't know the exact time frame, but I should imagine we're talking about within a few weeks or within a month or so. If she's not able to raise that investment, there is a danger that she will have to stop producing Fungtn beer and close down production altogether. And that would be really sad. It is so heartbreaking watching people in our industry trying their damnedest to help people to live the life that they want to live and produce something of exceptional quality, and coming up against these barriers that all businesses do face. Of course, I myself, acknowledge that it is difficult to find the funds sometimes to keep going. But obviously, when you're talking about beverage production, when you talk about food and drink, there are so many costs involved to make sure that the drink is produced safely, that it's produced to the right quality, that particularly with alcohol-free drinks, that they're made in such a way that they can have the longest possible shelf life. A lot of people still don't understand the cost challenges of producing low and no beers. So with all that being said, I'm going to send you into the episode now and hope that you enjoy listening to it. And if after you've heard Zoey talk so passionately and with such good grace and such good humour about what she does, if you think this might be a brand that you'd like to invest in, then make sure you reach out. Slide into the DMs, put a note in the comments below, email me on denise@lownodrinkermagazine.com, and I will put you directly in touch with Zoey. Or, of course, you can go and find her via her website, which is fungtnbrewing.com. That's FUNGTN.com. So, without further ado, here we go with this week's episode, and I'll relaunch back into the Low No Drinker podcast. Happy listening. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Low No Drinker podcast. Today I am joined by Zoey Henderson, the founder of Fungtn Beers, the mushroom beer brand. And I am very excited to start chatting to her because this is one of those areas that I think people just don't know enough about, and I want to get the word out there. And mushrooms are one of those foods that can divide a room. Right? So my best friend, my husband and I's best friends, they hate mushrooms and we love mushrooms and we argue about it all the time. So I'm going to then show them or make them listen to this podcast so they can find out just how wonderful they are. But that's enough for me. I'd like to say hello to Zoey and welcome to the podcast. Hey Zoey, how are you?
Hi Denise, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I will get a chance to rep Team Shroom.
That's right.
Dispel some myths about the rumours that people hear about mushrooms.
Fantastic. Fight the good fight for the shroom. So what I'd like to do is just spread the word and educate people about your fantastic brand, and also about yourself, because you're an awesome woman and you're doing some amazing stuff. I can see that you've got so much going on. Take us back to wherever you're comfortable. What is the journey that's led you to be where you are now in terms of creating this amazing beer?
So I'll do a short version because, I know it's long form content, but we've not got all day. So Fungtn was kind of founded from a desire to get more functional mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms into people's diets to try and help me and others to empower their health, and kind of doing that through the foods and drinks that they consume. I'm very passionate about people being empowered to look after their health. And I think that there's so many things that we look over now in our modern world in terms of herbs and botanicals, plants and fungi that have been used historically, ancient wisdom that's been kind of used to keep us health and well and healthy over the years. And we see there's a bit of a resurgence coming back in that, food is thy medicine. Things that we put into our bodies every single day can be really critical in keeping us fit and healthy. And this has been no more kind of highlighted than the last few years, where people are suddenly going, right, what can I do to help support my immunity? 2020, 2021, we weren't going many places. We weren't able to do lots of things that we normally did to help support our physical and mental health. So people really started to go, what can I do today, now, 3, 4, 5 times a day to help empower my health? And a lot of that was around eating less, crap, less sugars, less toxins, which alcohol is a huge one, looking to different herbs and supplements to try and support immunity. So I have been interested in herbs and fungi and plants a really long time. I actually discovered medicinal mushrooms on a trip to the US probably almost 10 years ago, when there's a really cool brand called Four Sigmatic, which is over here now. It's a mushroom coffee brand. And they were just launching, and they had a pop-up in LA in a cool place called Abbot Kinney, and it was called the Shroom Room. And there was this crazy guy, long hair, he had a top hat on, and he was just in this room surrounded by mushrooms. And I liked mushrooms on toast, and I'd heard about magical mushrooms, but I didn't really understand that there were millions of different species of mushrooms and hundreds of different mushrooms that people had used medicinally. They're called functional medicinal mushrooms, and they were kind of mostly inedible, so you'd have to boil them down into a tea or a tincture, but they've been used for thousands of years in traditional health and wellness, Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, as kind of life tonics. Reishi mushroom, which is one of the mushrooms we use, is known as the mushroom of immortality, and was used by the Chinese royal physicians to keep the royal family fit and healthy. Now, how they knew exactly what the mushroom was doing, we don't know, but now our modern science knows that these mushrooms are full of different bioavailable compounds that are really beneficial to our health, things like polyphenols, beta-glucans, that actively tap into our already amazing systems that we have in our body, but really they don't boost them, they just support them to be at their best. So I always use the analogy, you're not bringing more bouncers into the club, you're just beefing up the bouncers that you do have to be super hardcore. And this is what these adaptogens and these mushrooms do. So I'd been into that, and I'd got referred to different mushrooms for different health issues over the past. I had quite bad stress. I used to own a cafe in East London, and I had a very hectic lifestyle, and I was out enjoying myself as a young 20-something does in London, burning the candle at all ends, and I started to get really bad eczema and kind of skin conditions, which I think were brought on by stress and tiredness and exhaustion. And a naturopath recommended I take reishi mushroom, which is now known to be an anti-inflammatory and antihistamine, and as well as reducing my alcohol, cutting out things like meat and dairy, getting more sleep, not partying as much. I really started to see an effect, and I started researching these mushrooms and really kind of going down that rabbit hole. At the same time, I started to kind of still working in hospitality and kind of the nightlife social scene in London. I started working for an alcohol-free bar and restaurant. This was in like end of 2018, and it was quite ahead of its time. It was alcohol-free, it was vegan, it was gluten-free. Now it's like bang on trend. Then it was still a bit like niche. But what I noticed were people were coming to a really cool bar. They had one in Shoreditch, one in Covent Garden, one in Notting Hill. People were going to have a really nice dinner, meet some friends after work, pop in and have a lunch, and alcohol wasn't part of the conversation. And it wasn't like, normally we'd have, you sit in a pub or you sit in a restaurant with your pint of Coke, feeling a bit sorry for yourself, not enjoying the flavor pairings and the exciting kind of specialness of an adult drink that your friends were enjoying, that were having a glass of wine or a beer. Or you'd be in somewhere like maybe a shisha bar, or you'd be somewhere that was like a juice bar, somewhere where alcohol wasn't even part of the question, but it didn't feel like the cool, nice venues that you might like to go to normally. So this really sparked something and sparked this interest in me, and actually started to see that there were some really amazing products coming to market. Before, our alcohol-free options had been quite traditionally shit. We had some quite bad quality alcohol-free beers, or we had very sticky, sweet mocktails, and the era that gave mocktails their bad name. It was just, all the fruit juices behind the bar and a freaking umbrella stuck in it, and you're like, oh God, no, thank you. Your teeth are furry after getting halfway through. And so really, having an alcohol-free option was really had a really bad rep around it. But here there were some amazing brands coming to play. Lucky Saint were one of the first brands to walk through the door, and Luke had just launched the brand. The guys from 3 Spirit were coming in, and they were like, we've just developed this new product. And I was working as the operations director, so I was getting to meet all these founders and all these brands, and I was like, oh my gosh, actually some really cool stuff is happening in the space. So I moved into kind of working in the alcohol-free space as a consultant for mindful drinking. So taking the experience I'd learned at the bar, and then working with brands, helping them come to market, and then working with venues, helping them to understand how to place these products. And that was really key, because your bar staff, when someone said, I'll have a pint of Coke, would just give you a Coke. They wouldn't go, oh, are you not drinking because XYZ? Can I offer you an alcohol-free beer? Oh, do you know we do an alcohol-free gin? Oh, what's that? And teaching them to talk about the products and understand them, and also to add value, which was critical, because one main reason for people not drinking, certainly in my generation, was I need to save some money. If it wasn't you're on antibiotics, it was like, I need to save some money, so I'm not going to drink. And your night out was cheaper, because we attached the value of the drink on, crazily enough, the thing in the product that was doing you the worst harm, and it was actually a cheap byproduct of its manufacturing. Alcohol is a byproduct from fermentation. And so, you'd go, why on earth would I go out, not get pissed, and still spend, £6 on a gin and tonic? Not understanding that actually it's the social occasion, it's the flavor pairing, it's, that kind of signifying moving into a different occasion. And so there was a lot of work to be done around the value proposition of alcohol-free products. And it was really exciting. And then obviously we all, decided to stay indoors for a little bit, and everything shut, and a hospitality consultant wasn't really getting much work. And so it started me thinking about products and alcohol-free products, and actually the next trends that I saw coming in, which was actually people for the first time talking about health and wellness regimes and what their reasons for not drinking alcohol into the adult occasion. We could never talk about health and wellness in that space, in the evening space, in the occasion space, in the dinner space, because there was always alcohol framing it. It was the what juices you're having in the morning, what stuff you're having after your workout, what are you having in your coffee or tea in the morning to kind of support your day. We never had those conversations around ingredients, around drinks that you have on social occasions. And this is the first time we started to see it coming in. And I thought, actually, there could be a space for mushrooms to go into another product. And like a lot of products, at conception, it's the founder going, I want something that I don't have. So I was putting my mushroom supplements, which I have in my coffee today still, in my coffee every morning. I was drinking a lot of coffee in lockdown. I was like, I want to drink less coffee, but I still want to have my mushrooms. And then the thought just came, well, I'm having an alcohol-free beer every afternoon, so why don't I put my mushroom powder in there? The flavor profiles are quite similar. So, the other products that contain mushrooms in terms of consumer products on the market are things like coffees, cacao drinks, chocolates, things with that kind of umami, nutty, earthy, bitter, sweet flavor profiles. And hops are exactly that. So it was as rough as me putting a spoon of powder into an alcohol-free beer and it all fizzing up everywhere. But actually what was left had a really interesting taste and a really complementary taste, and not really out there, still very beery, but enhanced by the flavor of the mushrooms. And I thought, hang on a minute, I've got something here. And that was mid 2020. And I worked with a beer brewing technologist to help me develop the liquid, and gave him the flavor profiles of the mushrooms I wanted to use. And then we worked with I certainly learned about the types of hops and those pairings that we could bring on. And then we launched the products in end of 2020. So we kind of came to market about November 2020. And that, in a nutshell, is where we are today.
That is a great story, and one day you have to tell me the long version.
Yeah. Over a beer.
over a mushroom beer. That's really interesting. There's so much stuff that you said there that really resonated with me. You know, that sort of living that hectic lifestyle, and then it affecting, you're seeing the physical effects of what you're putting your body through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming through on your skin, on your face. I still suffer with alopecia. I got really bad alopecia when I was pregnant with my second child, and then went back into bad habits of eating and drinking and those sorts of things, and the spots on my skin. And it's just being able to find something that can do something for us, that can bring a positivity just by changing some small habits in the way that we eat and look after ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's from something that, it's, as you say, there are millions of varieties of mushrooms out there, but I think they're like really misunderstood, because I think people either know about button mushrooms in the supermarket or magic mushrooms.
Exactly. And nothing in between. We do have a lot of mycophobia, so the fear of mushrooms in the West, and that kind of stems from long complicated history of kind of crushing indigenous culture in the British Isles, which we did have an indigenous culture, and it was kind of based around shamanism and herbs and plants, and hundreds of women were burnt as witches because they used natural remedies, and we were kind of indoctrinated into another way of living, and we were kind of told that herbs and plants were bad. You shouldn't be making potions, you shouldn't be using natural remedies, God will look after you, and kind of, so it was really demonized. And there are other countries that kind of didn't adopt as much of a kind of Christian way of living, Nordic countries, which were still very much had lots of different gods for a really long time. Their relationship with mushrooms is much more healthy. They forage more, people really understand the different benefits that mushrooms can do from a nutritional point of view. They still use a lot of natural remedies because they kind of kept on to that culture. And then obviously you go to the West, the East, which is where most of the medicinal mushrooms were and still are cultivated, in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine in India, and they really still understand the powers that these plants and mushrooms can hold. And so we had this fear, and alongside our kind of cooking and what we stopped foraging for mushrooms and cultivating mushrooms, so we really just stuck with these generic button mushrooms and field mushrooms. And actually a fun fact is, button mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, chestnut mushrooms are all the same mushroom. They're just different growing stages. So in fact, we only, I think they're called agaricus, so we only eat one type of mushroom in the UK.
Wow.
Really. Now it's opening up, and you see some really interesting, culinary mushrooms like shiitakes and gnocchis and oyster mushrooms in supermarkets and in farmers markets and stuff. But for a long time, we just had that one mushroom that was never really cooked very well. It could be quite slimy. It was a bit of a funny texture. Didn't really get integrated into many dishes, and so a lot of people just don't like mushrooms, and I get it. I really get it. But that's the one thing we always say about this beer: no, it won't get you high, and no, it won't taste like mushrooms. People go, "Oh my god, a beer that tastes like mushroom! I couldn't imagine it worse." But actually, it doesn't taste of mushroom, so people really do have to taste it to believe it.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, it's going to take me a while to get my head over the fact that button mushrooms and chestnut mushrooms and portobello mushrooms are all the same thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's blown my mind for the week. So thank you for that. So speaking of the flavour, then tell me a bit about the beers that are in the range, and what they taste like. And I know that they're all made with different types of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And why you chose the ones that you chose to go with each one.
So when I launched the range, I knew it was a bit of a, we were in a pandemic, the world was upside down. So I was like, right, now's the time to do something a little bit weird. If it doesn't work now, it's not going to work, ever. But I really wanted to make sure that there wasn't an excuse for people to go, oh, I tried it, I didn't like it. And I know how people's flavor profiles differ and things that they enjoy, and also the occasion. So when you might want something with more flavor, with more refreshing. So I thought launching with a range of 3 was a really good way to make sure at least somebody would like one in the range. So
Right.
we stuck to kind of 3 of the most well-known and well-loved craft beer styles. So we have an IPA, we have a light citra beer, and then we have a dark lager. So the dark lager is a bit more niche, maybe. It's a bit more, you see it a lot more in Northern Europe, these dark lagers and malted, not a stout, so still a lager and light, but with that kind of brewed with malt, it got more of a kind of chocolatey, richer flavor profile to it. The classic IPA, kind of has shot to fame in the last few years with the kind of the craft beer revolution, the last 10 years. And then the citra beer, which is great, and it's light and juicy, goes really well with like spicy foods. You can kind of pair it with most stuff. It's a great session beer in the summer. So out of those 3, I knew that it would be one that would resonate with someone and could resonate at different points within their day and in their kind of social sphere. And then I wanted to pair them with 3 mushrooms that were complementary in their flavor profiles, but also were quite well known. Not all medicinal mushrooms you can use in consumer products because they're not that well known in the UK. So they fall under something called a novel food register, which means that there's just not enough, in their opinion, there's just not enough evidence of them being used in foods. Even if you could buy them in a supplement, for me to then take that supplement and put it into a beer, it's a very complicated process. So I also chose ones that were probably the most widely known in terms of research and availability. So the first one is lion's mane, which is an incredible mushroom. It's got a lot of press recently. It's probably the one that people hear the most of. It is edible as well as being a medicinal mushroom, and it has a really delicious, when cooked, not in the beer, kind of sweet, almost chickeny flavor to it and texture. So you throw it in a pan, there's garlic and herbs, and it's like really meaty and delicious. And when it's dried, it has like a sweet walnut flavor to it. So that works really nice with a hop heavy, oily IPA. Lion's mane is an incredible nootropic mushroom. So in our brains, we have something called nerve growth factor, and this is a protein that's synthesized, and it effectively covers the myelin sheaths that go around your neurons that protect them, keep them firing, feed blood and nutrients to them, keep you sharp, keep those kind of synapses, creating those pathways to keep our memory and our mind fit. As we're stressed, eat bad things, get older, this coating that goes around your neurons can degrade, and with that can come things like brain fog, memory loss, and at the extreme end, Alzheimer's and dementia. We see very little of this protective coating in the brains of people that have those cognitively degenerative diseases. So nerve growth factor is a protein that we produce. There are precursor proteins in lion's mane called arenosines and herenosomes that actually help the body produce more of this factor. So it's been used epidemiologically, in vitro, studied on rats, that patients that have onset dementia, signs of Alzheimer's, were given really high doses of this lion's mane mushroom, and it was shown to increase this protective coating around their brains and reverse some of the effects. So it's super, super powerful. It's also a hormone regulator. There's been some interesting studies on women with the menopause, hormone fluctuations. This kind of helps create a homeostatic level with your endocrine system, so the way that your hormones work around your body. So it's a really incredible mushroom. We're seeing lots more supplements come to market with it, lots more research on it. So lion's mane for me was a real heavy hitter. And like I said, the flavor profile worked really well with our earthy, hoppy, full-bodied IPA. IPA is a really strong, almost bitter taste to it. It's not for everyone. So to put in a mushroom that was maybe a bit milder, that wasn't as strong, you would kind of lose it. So it adds that dimension of sweetness, and it adds a really kind of balancing effect with the heavy oils of the hops.
So with like lion's mane, is that something that if people, because it sounds absolutely amazing, or the benefits that you can get from that in terms of growing old the way you want to, with your faculties still intact, and particularly for your hormone balances and things, is that something that people can find by itself in a specialist shop somewhere and go and cook it up?
Yeah, definitely. Not even a specialist shop now. We're seeing mushroom supplements in your high street chemists, Holland Barrett, Boots now I've seen has got a range of supplements, mushrooms, and then obviously all your Planet Organics, your Whole Foods, and all little health food stores. Yeah,
Great.
you can buy it in powder form, in capsule form, in tincture form. Just Google Lion's Mane benefits. You'll see lots of information, loads of like peer-reviewed studies as well about it, not just kind of personal opinion. And yeah, it's something that's really widely known, and like you can buy it fresh and cook it up and eat it. But what's interesting about these compounds, so they're called beta glucans, and they're kind of polysaccharides, so they're carbohydrate based chains. Some of them live in deeper parts of the cell of the mushroom than others, so by getting an extract, you're pulling out different parts of the mushrooms, and you're getting the whole complex of benefits. If you eat it, you're not getting all of the range of benefits. So I'd always recommend eat it. Great, because nutritionally they're really, really good for you as well. Lots of magnesium, copper, vitamin B, vitamin D. But if you use an extract, you're getting kind of like the full spectrum, and you're getting more benefits of it. But yeah, they're really widely available. And then our dark lager, which is kind of a bit of a Marmite. People either really like a stout or a dark lager, or they don't. But that's a really full-bodied malted chocolate lager. We use shiitake. So shiitake is one of the most well-known culinary mushrooms in the world. We have it in our supermarkets now. We didn't 10 years ago, which is great. So you see it in a lot of recipes. It's really high in vitamin D. It's really high in manganese, but also it's a natural statin, so it can help lower blood pressure as well. It's really immunosupportive, and it's packed with nutrients that can kind of help support well-being, like B12. It's used in medicinal in pharmacology. They turn some extracts of shiitake into statins and into drugs that help to lower blood pressure. And it's just been used as a food to generally incorporate into your diet in China and Asia for thousands of years. Shiitake's got a really interesting umami kind of savory flavor to it that just adds that depth. So that's why it's such an enjoyable mushroom to eat. But it adds a real kind of a balancing depth to the sweetness of the malt that we put in the dark lager. And then the final one is our reishi citra. So we use citra hops. So they're kind of quite oily, quite heavy, quite floral hops. And reishi is a very bitter mushroom. It is, probably one of the most unpleasant to just have as a powder if you were to mix it with water.
Okay.
So that you have to get that balance right. But it really paired well with the oily floral hops that we were using. So our beer is kind of floral, light, almost like a sweet honey flavor running through it as well, but not on kind of like the perfumey heady, on like a lighter top note. And reishi is an incredible mushroom. It's an antihistamine, it's anti-inflammatory. I start taking it from March through to the end of summer for hay fever, and it's really helped my allergies, I've noticed over the summer. I used to take over-the-counter hay fever medications, but since becoming vegan, I've realized that most of them have lactose in them as a binder. So I stopped taking those, and a naturopath said, well, you can also take reishi as an antihistamine. And it's an incredible mushroom, known as mushroom of immortality, as I mentioned. And that, again, can really be immunosupportive. It's also a vasodilator, so it helps calm us. It helps get into that parasympathetic nervous system, the kind of fight or flight. So it's used as a kind of calming tonic. It's really great to have kind of towards the end of your day. And yeah, the bitterness in it really pairs well with the juiciness of the citra hops. So that's the range.
Wow, there's a lot of amazing things going in those beers. It's mind-blowing, isn't it, to think about all the benefits that you can get in your drink or in your food, what you consume, just by turning to nature, excuse me, and just saying, what is it that I can just have from Mother Nature to add to my life.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where there was a term that you used before that I wanted to come back to, because some of our listeners or watchers might not know it. You use the term nootropics.
Yes.
So if you could just explain a little bit more for people what that phrase actually means, because I know there's a lot of talk at the moment about nootropics and functional and another word used, which is adaptogens. Yeah. Can you just tell people a little bit what those words actually mean?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of these words that are coming into our kind of culture now around kind of healthy eating and healthy living. We live in a culture that's quite dominated these days by this pill popping culture. You want something to be immediate. So I have a headache, I have an illness, I have something, put a cream on it, take a pill, and I want to see immediate effects. That's not how the body works. The body works in cycles. The female body, especially due to our menstrual cycle, our hormone fluctuations. So we really work in a cycle of days. So our skin has a certain amount of days it takes to regenerate. Our liver has an amount of days that it takes to regenerate. And so if you're taking something to cure or to support your body to kind of fix an ailment, one, you have to look at the bigger problem. So why have I got bad skin? Why have I got, it's not just a physical mechanical issue. It's probably stress. It's probably something I'm not addressing. Can we get to the root of that? Then there still might be a fallout, and your body will still take a while to recover from whatever it is that's caused this ailment. And then you can really start to support your body and nourish it. And so we have to, consumers and us, we have to get into the mindset that if I just take mushroom supplements, if I take it today, will I feel better tomorrow? Probably not. Maybe, because there is a bit of placebo, and placebo is a real ingredient. If you think something and you manifest it to be true and it's true, then it's worked. So, we have to give these things time. So adaptogens is the first term I'll address. And adaptogens are basically herbs and plants and fungi that work synergistically with our body to help our bodies perform at their best. Now that might sound a bit lofty, but actually our bodies performing at their best are incredible. We are basically superhumans. We can repair, we can heal a lot more than we actually think that we can, but we need to give our body time to do that. And so adaptogens help kind of boost our internal systems. We degrade them every day by our modern lives. Even if we're pretty healthy, we don't get the right sleep, our circadian rhythms can be all over the place, we don't eat the foods we should do, we don't move enough, all of these things, or we do things to extremes. And so our body all the time is really kind of fighting to keep us at this optimal functioning, and adaptogens simply support that. The term was coined by a Russian scientist kind of back in the 60s when he was looking for natural remedies to help support troops on exercise duties, and he identified certain things like ashwagandha and rhodiola and reishi and other types of herbs and fungi that actually naturally help support the body to perform at its best without using a chemical substance. So that's an adaptogen. Just think adaptogen, adapt. Your body is adapting to its surroundings, and these herbs are helping you perform at your best when you're taking them over a long period of time. You might not see that. If you're taking something just to keep a good balance of health and well-being, you might not notice something instantly, but then you might look back and go, God, I've not had a cold for like a year. I really recovered from that cold or COVID or flu or whatever really quickly. Okay, actually, maybe, without submitting your body to science,
Yes.
it's probably going to be the fact that you're taking these adaptogens to help balance it. Nootropics, again, are kind of in the same. We've heard a lot of like biohacking and nootropics, and there's kind of things that you can do to boost yourself, to make yourself a bit more superhuman. And nootropics are simply, again, herbs and plants and combinations of remedies that help support your brain function and help support your cognitive health, which we all know is super important. Now that can be one end from, taking things like lion's mane to help with brain fog and memory, all the way to taking things like microdosing to help support your mental health, which is really coming into the mainstream, taking really small, psychedelic doses of things like mushrooms to help kind of create and open your neuronal pathways. And we know there's a lot of information and studies around psilocybin, which is the active component in magic mushrooms. If you take part of that psilocybin, not to the point of where you hallucinate, but to the point of where it just opens up your neuronal pathways and really starts firing. And it's like, your brain is a muscle, and your brain, needs to be exercised, and you need to break down different pathways. And if you tread on the same road all the time, that path becomes really ingrained. That road could be very unhealthy in terms of your behaviors, in terms of things that you do, your habits. But working with, say, very small doses of psychedelics in a microdosing way can just take you off that path and help kind of carve out new paths of behavior. So there's lots, the term nootropics can be quite varied, but it's basically helping to support cognitive health. And then functional, which is a bit harder to pin down, because having a function. Coffee could be functional. It has
Right.
a function. A protein water could be functional. So it is being used across everything from energy drinks to sports drinks to caffeinated products to medicinal products. But again, functional is basically Coca-Cola is not functional. You could say it's giving you some energy because of the caffeine, but it's more products that have a function that go beyond its its primary usage of quenching your thirst or giving you an energy rush. So that could be herbs and plants that have adaptogenic qualities. It could be something that helps support your immunity with added vitamins, or it could be something that supports your sleep regulation. So functional is really products that go past just nutrition and practical use of quenching your thirst.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. That's the clearest explanation I've heard of that. And I think it's well, it's because you hear a lot of these terms and I think you understand them, or you've got a vague idea, so you go, yeah, I get it. But then if you're asked to explain it, you're like, well, I think it does this and I think it helps with that. So it's good to actually know more clearly. So thank you for that. So I'll take you back to the beers then. So how is it that these beers are made? Obviously, I don't want you to give away too many trade secrets, but in terms of the mushrooms themselves, what can you tell me about how they're actually incorporated into the liquid?
So it has to be a clear night. There's a full moon. I'm in a cave. Little fairies helping me, toiling around my potion. It's actually not that exciting. I mean, we stick really true to a craft beer recipe, and that's what I love about alcohol-free beer. Unlike some other alcohol-free products, which are still amazing, but they are kind of re-engineering a product to give effects of alcohol or to give a flavor profile that's similar, and that's brilliant. But it's kind of not the actual original product. Whereas alcohol-free beer, if you cap fermentation, which we do, so there's two ways you can make it. You can de-alcoholize, which is a short ferment, getting up to 2, 3, 4 ABV, and then using heat, reverse osmosis, basically pulling the alcohol out of it. You can do that way, or you can use a different type of yeast, heat sensitivity, and you can kind of cap how much it ferments. So it gives a little short run, breaks down some of those really nice sugars in the wort, gets those flavors coming out of the beer, and then we kill off the yeast with heat or temperature control, and then it doesn't ferment anymore. But essentially, you're making a beer. We're in a brewery. We have exactly the same ingredients: barley, malt, yeast, water. We do exactly the same process. It's just the time that we ferment it that's different. So for initially, we're a beer, which is great. So it's really easy for consumers to understand. If you love the taste of beer, but you don't want the alcohol, you know what you're getting. You know how to use it. It's in a can. There's no faffing around. You don't have to make it into something snazzy. It's just there. You just got to make sure it's cold. So the alcohol-free beer was for me the vessel that I just love the simplicity of it. And then we brew quite a traditional craft recipe, but we do a few things differently. One, we reduce the fermentation, but also I wanted to make the drink gluten-free. Now, I'm not intolerant, but one of the main side effects of drinking lots of beer is gas and bloating. That's because you're literally drinking gluten, and gluten is fine. It's not harmful to most people unless you have an intolerance, but it is quite a complex protein for our bodies to break down. So when you're caning pints and pints of beer, you do get gassy. That's from the CO2, but it's also from your body's processing these quite intense carbohydrates and proteins. So I use a natural supplement in tank that basically does what your body does. So it breaks down the gluten. So we use all the delicious gluten grains that have the nice flavor, your barley, your malt, your wheat, but we then reduce the gluten. So by the time we have the finished product, we get it down to less than 10 parts per million, which we can say is gluten-free friendly, unless you're really extreme celiac. If you just have a gluten intolerance, then you're good to go. So we do that. We've also make the beer vegan. And a lot of people go, well, all beer's vegan. It's like, well, no, not necessarily. Especially in alcohol-free, in order to make sure you're getting back some of the body that alcohol, because alcohol is an amazing flavor carrier and it's amazing giver of body and viscosity into a product. So when you're removing that or not putting much in, you can be left with something that's a bit flat and a bit watery. So people put lots of different things in to pad out and to support the viscosity in their liquid. And lactose is one, or whey is one, which is obviously a derivative of milk. Our mushrooms are, 90% polysaccharide based. They're starch based, and actually, as they break down in the liquid, they add back a bit of body. So that's kind of what we use as our body enhancer. And we put the mushrooms into the brew as an extract. So they've been worked in a lab already. We have a really great mushroom partner that we use that extracts the beer with water and with ethanol to get different compounds out, so you're getting a really full complex of the mushroom. And we put that into the brew, and then we condition it and filter it and can it and do it. The whole process is very, very similar, exactly the same to making beer. There's a bit different filtration that goes on because of you have certainly different strategies you need to employ when there's no alcohol. Obviously, alcohol kills lots of bugs, kills lots of stuff that you're going to get in there. So there's a bit more technical stuff in terms of filtration. But yeah, it's a really great craft beer recipe. And I think what was interesting in the last few years, we've seen some mad flavors in beers, like roast dinner flavor and chocolate peanut butter porters and some really wacky stuff. So actually putting a mushroom into a beer, isn't that weird? And that was one thing that when we kind of launched, people were going, mushrooms in a beer, and you go, what do you think fungi is? What do you think yeast is? And they're like, oh, yeast is like the OG fungi. Yeast is one of the oldest microorganisms we have on the earth, and it's a fungus. And they're like, oh, so already all beers are a fungi beer. We're just adding in a different type of fungi. And then they go, oh, okay, that's not that
weird. I'm sorry, roast dinner beer? I've missed that one.
Yeah, there was a brewer up north that did roast dinner flavoured beer, which was pretty wild. Gravy, roast potatoes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it works for crisps. I'm not quite sure about the beer.
Obviously, you can roast dinner and have a sip of beer, but
Okay, interesting. So how has it been received then? So you mentioned, people say, oh, there's mushrooms in the beer.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know that anyone who goes and takes a brief look at your website will see that it's been received by a lot of different establishments, a lot of different people have covered it. What's been the sort of reaction you've been getting when you speak to people in terms of, is it, I'm guessing they're sort of like, oh, what's that? And then they taste it and then they're like, yeah, hi.
Definitely. And that was one of the challenges from a branding point of view and how we were going to talk about it. The design of the can, we wanted it to be, to have, so we've got the stylized mushroom logo on the can, which actually came from, where is it now? Came from a tattoo on my arm.
Amazing.
So the logo went on my arm.
How cool is that?
Went on the can. So it's like, I'm on brand.
That's it. Yeah.
That's a commitment to the
cause. That is 100% commitment. Love it.
So we wanted it to be, we wanted people to understand there are mushrooms in it, but we didn't want it to be too woo-woo and like, a little dancing mushroom on the can or something a little bit weird. We wanted people to know about it, but we also had to be very careful about kind of the layering of information. So it was like, first and foremost, we're a really great alcohol-free craft beer. We've won awards for it. We've got that flavour profile. We're vegan, we're gluten-free. We're brewed with mushrooms. It depending on what trade shows, and obviously the first year was really difficult. There were no trade shows. We didn't start doing trade shows till kind of end 2021. Really 2022 was the year of the trade shows, so it was hard to get the liquid onto people's lips to taste it, but a lot of the time you lead with alcohol-free beer. Great, they try that. I mean, that was a hard enough sell a few years ago. People go, oh, what's the point if you've got no alcohol in it? But they'd taste it and they'd be like, oh, that's really good. Oh yeah, so it's brewed with mushroom. What? And then you kind of have that whole conversation, and the thing is to be like unapologetic about it. Our tone of voice is kind of almost like Oatly, in the way that we talk. It's like, yes, we brew beer with mushrooms. It's actually quite cool. It's not the only fungi in your beer, and people start we can play with that and people start to understand it. For us, getting people tasting it was really key. Getting awards for it in the craft beer space was really key. So people had that recognition to be like, oh, okay, it's won a gold in this and a bronze in this. So they understood that people who love beer were recognizing it for its flavors. But I think, getting people to try the product was really key. I think people's experimentation, and people have spent a lot of time just stuck on their laptops in 2020, trying new things, researching new stuff. And there were some interesting products that were coming out into market. There were mushroom supplements coming out. There were lots of talk about, health and immunity. And so people were a bit more experimental and willing to try stuff. And there was actually some benefits of we're basically launching a brand backwards. So you'd date your product, you'd launch in the on-trade, you'd get your brand ambassadors, you'd do all the trade shows, you'd do all the festivals. Then maybe if it was going well in a few years, you might sell stuff on your website online. You might do that. But that was quite rare for drinks to sell direct. 5-10 years ago, it was all on the on-trade and kind of to consumers that way. So we didn't have any of that. So it was like, right, we're launching online. We're launching where people, need to try the product and experiment with the product. And actually, I think people were a bit more inquisitive, because if you'd just been relying on a bar, to get listed in bars would have been a bit of a harder sell to begin with. You had to have that person to choose it. Was literally, we could target and find people online, make this cool proposition around the mushrooms, get their kind of interest, and then they'd try and create at home and be like, oh, this is quite cool. So when it opened up, they then wanted to find it in the shop. So they wanted to find it in their local cafe or restaurant. So yeah, it was interesting. But I think once people understood it wasn't going to taste like mushrooms and it wouldn't get them high, that might have put some people off. But, this was a different type of mushrooms. And at the same time, there was loads of people talking about fungi and mushrooms in the world. We had the New York Times did a huge feature on adaptogens. We were featured on NBC. Access Hollywood as like the future trend in food and drink. You had lots of different people launching products containing different types of mushrooms or containing different types of herbs and botanicals. It was featured as like a top trend in health and wellness in 2021 and 2022. So the world started to learn more about fungi. And of course, if anyone hasn't seen Fantastic Fungi on Netflix, really recommend watching it. It's an incredible movie. And that kind of really brought mushrooms out into the zeitgeist and into the trends. And so suddenly a beer with mushrooms wasn't that weird.
Suddenly it's like it's these waves that things going where everything seems a bit strange and unusual, and then you hear about something once and then you hear it again, and all of a sudden you're hearing about it everywhere.
I think you have to hear something, is it like 4 or 5 times before it kind of goes in? You're like, oh, I read about that, someone told me about that, I've seen that, oh, okay, It must be cool, it must be real, it's happening. And people spending a lot more time online definitely helped that, because you can be in multiple places at multiple times, and really, there is the algorithm targeting, but I think just in general, reading an article somewhere and then seeing a product and then seeing something on Instagram, it really helped us to kind of build the brand probably quicker than if we'd just been relying and putting all my energy onto like trade shows and going into bars and finding brand ambassadors, because you could get some amazing ambassadors, but that's one bar in one location or one trade show in one city, whereas we've managed to get a global audience and interest from the US, Canada, Australia, from really focusing on this third space, which is the internet.
That's it. And then those bars and those venues are going to be coming to you, because that's it, that you'll be recognized that you are. And as far as I'm aware, you're the leading or the only mushroom beer out there. I've not been able to find any other ones.
The only one. There are some products that contain mushrooms. Three Spirit has mushrooms. Katy Perry's new drink has reishi mushroom in her wine-based product. And there's mushroom coffees, but there's nobody brewing an alcohol-free craft beer with mushrooms. We're the only one.
There you go. One of a kind.
One of a kind, yeah.
Love it. Zoey, this has been amazing. Before I let you go, I have 2 final questions for you. Now, one is one that I ask everybody who comes on, because being Low No Drinker magazine, I'm trying to spread the love and the appreciation of the world of low and no alcohol drinks. So you're off to a friend's dinner party, and other than your amazing Fungtn, also Fungtn or Function? I want to make sure I'm saying it right.
It's a bit of a Nike. I say function because it's
function.
Functional, but loads of people say Fungtn, so you do you.
Okay. Thanks, babe. So you're off to your friend's dinner party, you're bringing your own drinks along. Apart from the amazing Fungtn, what other low or no alcohol drinks do you enjoy of an evening?
So when you stop drinking, there are certain, or moderate your drinking. I do drink, but I moderate it, and
Sure.
yeah, I choose what and when to drink very carefully these days. You turn up at a party, and a way to get a dinner party started, let's have a glass of bubbles, maybe after dinner let's have a shot, when I was a lot younger, and it kind of can add some fun dynamic to an evening's event. Unfortunately, a lot of that fun in the past has been created by alcohol. It's an instant fun starter, right?
Yeah.
You can have this fun without it, but I think one thing I like doing is bring that bit of theatre and a bit of fun to an occasion. So I'd always be the person that would probably instigate having a shot. So I'd take something like Three Spirit, the Livener. It's an amazing product. It has hibiscus in it. It has chili. It has adaptogens, and it's like, it just makes your mouth explode. It's gorgeous. It's such a great taste. So I'd definitely bring a bottle of that, and then maybe like after you've had dinner and we're having our pudding, or everyone's kind of chatting afterwards, I get everyone to do a shot, and it would just kind of raise everyone up a little bit, pack you full of something really amazingly healthy, and kind of get that feeling that you might have been doing if we were doing a shot, but way more benefits.
There you go. Fantastic. Great choice. Where should people go to find out more about you, more about the beer, if they want to join any newsletters or follow you on any socials? Where would you like them to find you?
So best place is fungtn.com, our website, and second place we're really active is Instagram, fungtn.brewing. You can find us there. We are stocked in, kind of about 150 independents all around the country. We've stocked in Planet Organic if you're in London. And if you can't find Fungtn in one of your local stores, then jump online and you can buy us direct. But also, if you have somewhere near you that you think, oh, this is really cool, I'd love to be able to buy Fungtn from there, always send me a DM, send us an email on the website, and say, get in touch with this cafe, restaurant, shop. And that's how we get a lot of our stockists, by consumers coming to us and saying, I buy online, but I'd love to be able to get at my weekly shop in XYZ. And we will reach out to them and hopefully get stocked near to you.
Excellent. And just for those who are listening, that's fungtn.com, fungtn.com.
That's it.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. I will make sure all the links are in the show notes and the captions and such below, and all those jazzy places where people go to find things. Thank you so much for joining me today, Zoey. It has been eye-opening and informative and fun, and I hope that everyone who is watching or listening has now walked away with a lot more knowledge about mushrooms than they ever thought that they would get in one very quick chat in the afternoon.
I hope so too. Yeah, I hope so too.